Hey folks, see if you've ever had this problem. You're trying to eat a little healthier, but you're in the grocery store aisle, you're looking at packaging, nutrition labels, and they're so confusing, you don't know what's good for you and what's not. Well, this is why I love Thrive Market, my go-to online grocery store for getting all of my healthy essentials delivered, and I don't even have to leave my couch. Finding better options for the whole family is easy with Thrive Market's Healthy Swap Scanner. Just scan a product and it instantly recommends healthier swaps. This is how my wife and I found our new favorite snack, IQ bars. Sometimes I eat one in the morning with my coffee, sometimes just later on in between meals. They also have so many on-site filters that make it simple to shop by the needs of everyone in the family. Maybe you have someone who needs gluten-free food, somebody that has a peanut allergy. Well, no more scouring ingredient labels when you can just filter it all on Thrive Market. My wife and I often use the high protein filter to stock up on things like Sieti chips. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/TCAT for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/TCATT, thrivemarket.com/TCAT. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 417 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. We just talked on Patreon about the massive amount of snow that we got this week.
We do.
And I'm sure other parts did as well. But, I'm pretty sore right now from cleaning up the snow.
Well, you and manual labor does not really go hand in hand.
No, it's not my forte. I'm completely honest about that.
No, you're a thinker.
I'm a thinker. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Leanne Cosson.
Hey, Leanne.
Susanna jumped out at our highest level.
Well, thank you, old Susanna.
Kristen jumped out at our highest level.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Kristen.
Mackenzie.
What's going on, Mackenzie?
And France Tremage.
Oh, on France Tremage.
That's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
Allison Gibson.
Hey, well, gotta love that, Allison.
Amanda Orenberg.
Hey, Orenberg.
Cleaning Princess Pinky McGee.
Man, Princess Pinky.
Alana Pitt.
I wonder if related to the Brad Pitt, Michael Pitt, Hollywood-ish Pitts.
Are Brad and Michael related?
No.
Okay.
They're just Hollywood Pitts,
Okay. Just other Pitts.
Yes.
We had Xenia.
Xenia sounds like a sci-fi kind of a show.
Yeah,
Doesn't
maybe.
it? Yeah.
And last but not least, April C.
Well, thanks, April C.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Anna Harvey.
Anna Harvey, you're awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate the new Patreon support, the continued support. We also had a great PayPal donation from Scott Kane.
Hey, thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thanks to everyone. So Gibbs, right now, we have an episode out on True Crime All the Time Unsolved where we're talking about Angela Green. And Angela Green was last seen in June 2019. There's a lot of mystery here, twists and turns. Her husband told their daughter that she was committed to a psychiatric institution.
Yeah.
But then, not long after, came up with a different story and then told police a completely different story.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into all of it.
Should be very thought-provoking.
Yeah, I agree. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
Let's dive in.
We're talking about Kodi Patten and Toni Fratto. But we start off talking about Micaela Costanzo. She was a 16-year-old from West Wendover, Nevada, who was murdered by two teens, one of whom she briefly dated. Now, they identified one suspect pretty quickly, but the other surprised investigators by coming forward on her own weeks later. Micaela Costanzo was born on May 3rd, 1994 in Elko, Nevada. At the time of her death, she was a student at West Wendover High School. Micaela was a popular student who was involved in basketball and track. She also worked on the school paper and wanted to be an author one day.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be an author.
Did you ever work on your school paper?
I worked on the school yearbook.
Yes, I did too. I don't even know if we had a school paper.
I don't think we did either.
But I do remember being on the yearbook, but it was only because this girl I was interested in said she was going to do it. And I was like, okay, I'll do it too.
And then did she not do it though?
No, she did it.
Oh,
she's the one who inadvertently turned around and stabbed me in my buttocks with the X-Acto knife.
Maybe she did it on purpose.
And ruined my Guess jeans and caused blood to,
I guess you wanted to quit after that.
No, strangely, it made me like her more.
Talking about Elko, Nevada. I actually have family in Elko, Nevada.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting for me. Probably nobody else, but for me, I found it interesting.
Could they be possible suspects? Maybe.
Most likely, no.
Micaela's former classmates had many positive things to say about her. For example, her classmate Heidi Thompson told local outlet KSL, when things are bad, she always has something good to say to you. She always makes you feel good about everything.
Man, I love people like that.
Well, let's face it. Those are the type of people with whom most people want to be around, right? Who wants to be around Debbie Downer all day?
Nobody I know.
You want to be around the people who are positive. They make you feel good about yourself. They brighten the room.
Yeah, lift you up.
Yes, those are people that you want to hang out with. Micaela disappeared after track practice on March 3rd, 2011. She was captured on camera, leaving school at 5:15 p.m.
I wonder if we would have had cameras back when I was going to school. One, how much trouble we would all got in.
You would have never graduated, first of all.
Yeah, it was a chore anyway. Even with my Mensa smarts. But and then you wonder what issues could have been solved if they had cameras back then.
Oh, a lot.
Yeah.
You think about the proliferation of video cameras, whether it's security cameras, streets, businesses, but then also like the personal security cameras and Ring doorbells and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
They've solved or helped to solve, quite a few crimes. Micaela normally got a ride home with her sister, but she was out of town. Micaela lived a few blocks away in an apartment with her mother, so she planned to walk home. Micaela's mother became worried when she never showed up and wasn't answering any calls or texts. She was reported missing, and the community came together to search for her. It was reported that 135 volunteers began searching on March 5th.
Healthy number.
Yeah, it's a pretty big number of people volunteering their time. But, I go back to, this is a 16-year-old girl in high school. How many people either had kids of a similar age or younger, or just had the thought in their head that, hey, if this was us, if we were in this position, we would hope that as many people would come out as possible. I truly think that's why a lot of people do it. Now, it's also the right thing to do. It's out of the goodness of their heart. But I think a lot of it comes from, putting themselves in the position of these other parents.
Right.
And thinking, how helpless that would be. What if I was in that position? I sure hope people would come out for me.
Yeah.
That day, a volunteer driving down a desert road 5 miles outside town saw that the ground had been stirred. Micaela's body was found in a shallow grave. At this site, she had multiple injuries and her throat was cut. Micaela's body was publicly identified on March 6, 2011. The West Wendover police chief said there was no suspect or person of interest at that time. And it's important to talk about the timeline here. I mean, you think about a lot of the cases we do, they drag on when you have a missing person.
Yeah.
It's not the case here. She disappears on the 3rd. The volunteers began searching on the 5th, and she's found on the 6th. So it's all happened very quickly. Doesn't surprise me that, at that point, police don't have a suspect or person of interest, or at the very least, they're not ready to disclose that information.
But her family at this point is going to be devastated.
No, there's no doubt about it. I don't even know, if most of us can comprehend the level of agony that would be like. You would have to go through it to really have a full understanding. But the community was also in shock. Detectives focused on interviewing Micaela's classmates, who said she was a kind person who would never hurt anyone.
Which makes you wonder, well, then who would hurt her?
Well, right. I mean, a lot of glowing things being said about her. Now, we've seen in some episodes where, that's kind of the standard line, but behind the scenes, there are some things, but people don't want to say that. They don't want to bring that stuff up. But I think by and large, a lot of the victims we talk about, they are really good people. And so it is a question of who would want to hurt them. But a review of Micaela's phone data led to the identification of a suspect, 18-year-old Kodi Patten, a senior at West Wendover High. Kodi and Micaela briefly dated in middle school, according to her friends. So middle school, it had been a while, right, since they dated. You wouldn't think just on the surface that would have anything to do with it. Right, you think back to like middle school boyfriends and girlfriends. It's not like most people are holding some big grudge later on in high school that, you got dumped when you were in the 7th or 8th grade.
Or later in life, Diane.
Diane dumped you. Kodi's parents managed the apartment building where Micaela lived. They hung out with each other at least once a week, but they had been distant for over a year and had barely spoken to each other. Micaela's mother, Micaela Costanzo, told the media that Kodi and Micaela were good friends as children. The police learned that Kodi was dating 19-year-old Toni Fratto, who was also attending West Wendover High. Kodi Patten was arrested and charged with murder on March 7th, 2011. So again, the timeline goes missing on the 3rd, found on the 6th. Kodi is arrested on the 7th. This all is happening very, very quickly.
Which is great for investigators.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, obviously, you would like to solve these cases as quickly as possible. I mean, you want to solve them correctly, but yeah, quickly as possible. Toni Fratto was questioned, but she wasn't considered a suspect in the weeks that followed the arrest. At a hearing on May 3rd, 2011, Kodi's defense attorney shocked the court by submitting an audio tape of Toni confessing to her involvement in Micaela's murder.
I would think they would be really shocked.
Yeah, I do believe this would be a very shocking kind of Perry Mason moment. Right? We talk about a lot of pieces of evidence, DNA, kind of 1 in 38 trillion or some number that conclusively proves, right, this person was there, they did it. But it's a little different when you hear somebody in their own words confess to doing something.
Yeah.
Now, unless that tape was doctored, altered, if there's some type of AI involved, which kind of does scare me a little bit moving forward, I think that would be shocking to everyone. Not to mention, this is a 19-year-old girl who is talking about her involvement in murdering another high school girl. Kodi's father drove Toni to the law office on April 22nd. She said she wanted to confess because she felt guilty. So we talked about how Kodi was arrested very quickly. It was almost 2 months later before it kind of came out that, Toni had involvement. and then another month before she confessed.
Well, that guilt can eat at you every day.
Well, I think to some it can. To some people, it obviously doesn't bother them because some people never come forward. The majority of people don't come forward.
Because they don't feel guilty, I don't think.
I don't think a lot of people do. According to a police report about the tape, Toni stated that she and Kodi took Micaela 5 miles outside of town to a remote gravel pit near the Utah-Nevada border. They beat her unconscious, and Toni cut Micaela's throat with a knife. They buried her in a shallow grave and drove past Wendover, Utah, to burn the knife in Micaela's possessions at another gravel pit. I mean, the one thing I'm taking from this is just the brutality of it from two fairly young people.
Yeah, to beat somebody.
This 19-year-old girl says she cut Micaela's throat. Now, we know women are capable of all kinds of heinous things, but it to me still is shocking when you think about, these kids' ages and I don't know, 19-year-olds kind of ganging up on a 16-year-old. It just seems pretty brutal. However, there were questions about Toni's timeline. Micaela left school at 5:15 p.m. Toni and her mother were present at a West Wendover Recreation District meeting at 6 p.m. Witnesses said they arrived a few minutes before the meeting began. This meant that the murder and disposal of evidence took less than an hour. The police conducted a run-through scenario and determined that 55 minutes was barely enough time. So if she leaves school at 5:15 and this meeting starts at 6, it's less than 45 minutes because they said they showed up a little early.
Yeah. And if the police are saying that 55 minutes is pushing it, you got a 10-minute gap there, right?
Well, I think that's why they're questioning. Did it really happen this way? Confidential sources also claim that Kodi called Toni and directed her to tell the police he was with her at the time of the murder. You think he did that from a prison phone, Gibbs?
Probably.
Right underneath the big sign that says all of these calls are recorded. Additionally, Kodi hadn't implicated Toni during any of his police interviews. She seemed calm and collected in the weeks after the murder, never indicating that she had participated in this violent murder.
So it makes you wonder, did she not? And this is all a effort to help Kodi out?
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange way to help somebody out by admitting your role in a murder. You're really putting yourself on the line, your freedom. Or does it go back to kind of what you said, which was, maybe the guilt just started to eat at her until she finally couldn't take it. But because of all this, many believe Toni confessed to a crime she didn't commit, and she did so at Kodi's direction. She had been visiting him in prison and talked to him on the phone often. Kodi was said to be a controlling and abusive boyfriend. There were reports that they were engaged to be married, but he had recently moved into Toni's parents' home after his parents kicked him out.
Always makes you wonder why a kid was kicked out of his own house.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the time something happened and it probably wasn't good.
I mean, I know sometimes parents can be
assholes.
Yes.
Yes, they can be. But most people don't kick their kids out of the house for no reason. Toni Fratto was arrested on May 5th, 2011 and charged with murder. Although there were doubts about her confession, she provided details of the crime that were not public knowledge. And these were things that would only have been known by someone who was involved. And you do hear that in many cases. It's often why we think police don't disclose certain things, right? They need to be able to corroborate somebody's story if they do come in and confess to a murder. It is pretty damning, though, I think, when you have details that have never been made public. Well, how'd you get those?
Yeah.
If you weren't really there, and you weren't really involved.
Yeah. So that means either you were there or someone fed you that information.
In late May 2011, forensic specialists collected samples from Toni's vehicle, home, and clothing to find trace evidence that could confirm her presence at the crime scene. Investigators also searched the crime scene in the gravel pit where Micaela's belongings were found partially burnt. Toni's preliminary hearing started on July 14, 2011. So at this point, Gibbs, Toni was facing new charges: felony kidnapping or acting as a principal to kidnapping, conspiracy to commit felony murder, or acting as principal to murder, and willfully destroying evidence or willful destruction of evidence.
Boy, that's a lot of potential time if found guilty.
Yeah, those are serious charges. The prosecution admitted there were some conflict with the timeline of events, but they noted that Toni had confessed twice to the murder, once to Kodi Patten's father and once to his legal team. Toni's defense attorney, John Springate, argued that those confessions came from non-credible sources, and there was no forensic evidence linking her to the crime. Springate called the tape confession wholly rubbish and argued the tape was a violation of attorney-client privilege.
So it sounds like he feels like there's some shenanigans going on.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but he also has a pretty tough job, right? He has to get out from under this taped confession. Like I said, I think a jury would put a lot of stock into a taped confession. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. You know, once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like their 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. The defense noted that Toni was at a public meeting with her mom from 6 to 7 on the night of the murder, but Toni said the murder was carried out by 6 p.m. Her taped confession was played at the beginning of the preliminary hearing. In the recording, Toni said Micaela had been texting Kodi about getting back together, but he didn't want anything to do with her. She said Micaela was in the vehicle when he picked her up that evening, he said he picked Micaela up so that they could talk. They drove outside of town because Micaela didn't want anyone to see us or anything. Micaela became agitated during the drive. Toni said, per the Deseret News, we didn't want to cause any problems or have any problems. We wanted to work everything out. Now, why is a statement like that so important?
Well, I think she's trying to say we didn't plan to kill her.
Which is a big deal.
Sure it is.
Right? When you're talking about, was this premeditated or not? Kodi stopped the vehicle and he and Micaela got out to talk. This quickly escalated into yelling and shoving. Toni said, I looked away and then heard a loud thud on the car. She got out of the car and saw Micaela on the ground. Toni said, everything from there on out was kind of a blur to me. It went downhill from there. In the recording, she admitted to hitting Micaela on the back with a shovel and said both she and Kodi participated in cutting her throat. They buried her and disposed of evidence. So Toni says, she didn't see it, but she heard this loud thud on the car. Well, if true, what would that have been? Maybe, Kodi slamming Micaela up against the car. While not good, it's not a deadly act. But from there, it turned deadly pretty quickly.
It sure did.
Toni says, I hit her with a shovel, and then we both cut her throat.
Which means they could have stopped at any point.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I was getting at. Okay, there's yelling, there's, maybe some shoving or there's an altercation, but pretty tough for Kodi probably to say he's in fear for his life.
Right.
And that, he had to kill this 16-year-old girl in self-defense. It's pretty tough, bro.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's feeling bad for him.
According to Toni, as they drove away, they asked themselves, what did we just do? What do we do? We didn't know what we had just done. And I have no idea what that feeling would be like.
No.
To know that you just ended someone's life.
But I think if that was something you did, you would have all kind of thoughts running through your head.
Adrenaline, fear. There's a lot of stuff going on inside your body. Toni's defense argued that her recorded statement wasn't credible. Parts of it were made up, and elements of her story, specifically about how Micaela was killed, were not correct. The defense noted that witnesses and school surveillance footage could only place Kodi Patten at West Wendover High, not Toni.
Well, that's not good for Kodi.
No, I would say not, especially with, the defense trying to argue that, the timeline doesn't make sense. Her confession was bogus. The defense called on Kodi's father, Kip Patten. According to Deseret News, the defense said Patten found out about Toni's involvement based on a conversation with Kodi during a jail visit on April 13th. Kodi and his father passed handwritten notes to each other to avoid being overheard. So you don't know enough not to, spill everything on the phone, but you're going to pass handwritten notes during the jail visit so nobody overhears you.
But if you have nothing to hide, why even do that?
Why are you worried about being overheard?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it doesn't prove anything, but it certainly doesn't look good. On April 16th, Toni confessed her involvement to Kip Patten and allegedly showed him the areas associated with the crime. As reported by the Salt Lake Tribune, Toni told him Kodi began digging a hole while she and Micaela stayed in the car. When the girls got out, Toni hit Micaela in the back of the head with a shovel. She and Kodi both kicked and punched Micaela and dragged her to the hole and stabbed her. And again, the more we talk about it, it's just such a brutal crime.
But it sounds weird that you're going to sit in a car while someone digs a grave.
Yeah, I mean, if Micaela knew that's what he was doing, then that would be pretty strange. Toni admitted that after the murder, she and Kodi went to a swimming pool to clean up. They picked up Kodi's cousin and his girlfriend in Wendover and went to McDonald's because that's where you go after you've killed a 16-year-old girl.
Get yourself a Happy Meal.
Yeah, or a Big Mac or some McNuggets or something. Kip drove her to Kodi's attorney's office on April 22nd to confess because she said she wanted to come forward with it. She didn't want Kodi to pay for something they both participated in. So, to me, if what Kip is saying is true, then it does kind of go back to, maybe a guilty conscience, and that's why she decided to come forward.
It's interesting, though. Kip wasted no time getting her up there for her to confess.
Yeah, now is he doing that for her, or is he doing that for himself and his son?
Might be a little self-serving there.
Yeah, it could be viewed that way. Toni's parents were out of town on this day. Kip knew they didn't want her speaking to an attorney without them present.
But he didn't care, did he?
And maybe he planned it for that day because of that very fact. Kip also testified that Toni and Micaela Costanzo didn't get along and said Toni and Kodi were talking about getting married. Kodi was baptized into the LDS Church in January 2011 so that the two could get married in the temple. Micaela's autopsy photos were presented at the preliminary hearing. She suffered bruises to her back, stab and slash wounds to the face and neck, and one wound that cut her jugular vein. The chief medical examiner of Washoe County testified that she bled to death, and her wounds could have been inflicted by a burned knife or a shovel found under Toni Fratto's trailer in West Wendover.
So they have a potential murder weapon.
Yeah, it doesn't sound to me as though they were able to, pinpoint it specifically. 17-year-old Tiffany Rasmussen, Micaela's best friend, testified that Micaela and Kodi dated in middle school, but she grew to dislike him. They had barely spoken to each other in more than a year. And, to me, it seems so very strange that if they hadn't spoken in more than a year, now all of a sudden they're getting together. The three of them are going in the car together.
And she's telling them that she wants them to drive out of town so no one sees us talking.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
So weird. Micaela received unusual texts from Kodi Patten on the day she went missing. Tiffany testified that Kodi texted Micaela he was wanting to do a project, but didn't explain what kind of project. He said he would pick her up from school. Micaela was just as confused as I was. And I could see why she would be confused. Yeah. This is a guy she hadn't talked to in over a year, and all of a sudden, she's getting texts from him. Hey, I'll pick you up. Let's do this project. I'm like, what are you talking about? The Salt Lake Tribune reported that Micaela's track coach saw Kodi pull up shortly before 5 p.m. Toni was ordered to stand trial on July 16, 2011. Kodi Patten's preliminary hearing started on August 2nd. Kip Patten testified about Kodi's confession on the night of his arrest. When they were alone, Kodi whispered that he didn't actually kill Micaela. Kip asked, what? And Kodi said, never mind. Again, a lot of this is coming from Kodi's dad, Kip. Obviously, as a dad, he doesn't want to see his son go away for, a long time, potentially the rest of his life. Does that mean necessarily he's lying? No.
No, this could be the truth.
It could be, but you'd also have to say he has a vested interest.
And if you really wanted to sell the whole Toni was involved story, this is a good place to kind of layer that in.
And it sounds like he's trying to paint a picture that not only was Toni involved, she was the main killer. It wasn't my son, Kodi. Kip said he didn't realize what his son was implying because of the emotional stress of the situation they were in. Kip asked Kodi several times why the murder occurred, but Kodi failed to give an explanation. The prosecution played Kodi's interview with the police on the night of March 6, 2011. According to KSL, Investigators gave Kodi time to talk to his father. Kip told Kodi to tell detectives what they needed to know, saying, "You got to go all the way. You need to put this to bed as quickly as you can. Get it done. The family needs their answers." And that's, kind of an amazing statement by a father who I'm sure he is worried about, what's going to happen to his son. If that's what he really said, and that's what was reported, he was basically saying, you got to tell the truth and you got to lay it all out there. Kodi eventually said that Micaela seemed interested in getting back together, but he wasn't willing to leave Toni.
Which conflicts with what Micaela's friend had said.
Well, you think about, any trial, any hearing. Really, what is it? It's a series of conflicting statements made by two different sides, right? That's essentially what a trial is.
Yeah. You're just trying to sell yours a little bit better than the other side.
Right. And you're usually saying the opposite or something different than what the other side is saying. Kodi explained that he and Micaela argued. While he was driving her, he stopped the vehicle and they got out to continue arguing. Things got physical because Micaela kept pushing him. He eventually pushed her back and said she just fell back and hit her head on the back bumper of the car. She didn't get up. And again, in some of these stories, obviously it's hard to say 100% who's telling the truth and who's not. What I will say is that, this is starting out as a very convenient story for Kodi.
It is.
And it's almost painting him as a victim, right? She's pushing me. She's getting physical with me. And eventually, I had to defend myself. He said when Micaela regained consciousness, they got into a struggle and Kodi shoved her again. Micaela fell backwards and hit her head on a rock, which caused a seizure. Kodi claimed he tried to pick Micaela up and put her in the car, but she continued struggling. He thought knocking her unconscious would help, so he hit her in the head with a shovel. Kodi said she made a really horrible sound that I can't get out of my head. So the question that I would put to you, Gibbs, is, you're on a jury and you're hearing this story. Where does it rank on your believability scale?
Yeah, it's pretty low.
Mine too.
Yeah.
He pushes her, she hits her head on the car. He pushes her again, she hits her head on a rock. And then by his way of thinking, it would just be better if she was unconscious. So I'm going to pick up this shovel and I'm going to hit her in the head with it after she's already had 2 substantial blows to the head. First of all, why do you have the shovel with you in the first place?
Exactly.
Is it because you were digging a hole that you were later going to place Micaela's body in? I mean, I know you carry a lot of stuff in your truck.
I do.
I do not routinely carry around a shovel. I mean, you have duct tape, zip ties, shovels.
Again,
all kinds of things.
That's just for a fun Saturday night.
Yeah. You never know what's going to happen. But, in all seriousness, I get it. You're trying to kind of worm your way out of the known facts and what's been said already. But please explain the shovel to me. When somebody already said that you were outside the car digging the shallow grave where she was ultimately found. Kodi said he panicked. He was afraid. He removed Micaela's clothing because he thought it would make her decompose faster. He considered taking her body to the dump, but couldn't bring himself to do it. He was asked about the plastic zip ties found on Micaela's wrist and said it was all part of the plan to dump her body.
You got a zip tie her to dump her body?
So now, again, you've got a shovel with you. You have zip ties. Either these things are just a part of your everyday repertoire of things you're carrying around in your car, or you took a kit with you because you knew what was going to happen.
Yeah. Which makes it more premeditated, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, could you make the argument that it might be easier to carry somebody's body if their hands and feet were zip tied? Yeah, you could make that argument. But to me, you have to explain why you already had these items with you.
Right.
Before an argument that you had no idea was going to break out did.
And you just happen to have some zip ties and shovel and all that in your car because it's normal for you.
He claimed he burned Micaela's clothes and put her body in a shallow grave. He sat there for about 2 hours and cried before he picked up Toni Fratto. So, I mean, the one thing is clear, Gibbs. In this confession, Kodi never said Toni was with him at all during the murder. He never even puts her in the car, doesn't have her hitting Micaela, nothing. At the end of the interview, Kodi said, "Can I just say on the record that I'm sorry? I hate being me, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, that it had to happen to someone who didn't deserve it." Okay. Yes, she did not deserve it. But the part I don't understand is, how were you in the wrong place at the wrong time? That part I don't get. Again, you see this with a lot of people. They'll say a little bit of truth. Then they'll say a bunch of stuff that is trying to soften or diminish their role in the crime. Outside court, Kodi's defense attorney noted that no physical or forensic evidence had been presented against him, and he believed Toni was the main culprit. Well, he's got to pin it on somebody else, right, to get his client off.
Of course. If he doesn't, they're going to continue to go after his client.
But doesn't it make it tougher? You know, that Kodi did this entire interview and never once said that Toni was with them, Toni did anything, that Toni was even there. The defense noted that there was no concrete evidence presented of when exactly the crime occurred, and the video of Kodi and Micaela leaving the school 4 minutes apart did not constitute a kidnapping. And I could see where maybe that argument does have a little bit of merit. On the second day of the preliminary hearing, the court heard that the sleeves of Micaela's sweater were tied in a knot, allegedly used to bind her. Testing found Micaela's DNA and 2 other profiles on the sweater. The other profiles had low levels of DNA, but one of them matched Kodi. The other profile was so low, it couldn't be conclusively matched to Toni Fratto. There was no blood found on the shovel used to hit Micaela. After Kodi's hearing, Cassie Fratto told the media that her daughter was with her from 5 to 7 p.m., the night of the murder. When speaking about the confession tape, she said Toni loved Kodi and at the time would have done anything to protect him. And, let's face it, Gibbs, you and I have talked about young love a lot, many, many times.
Yeah.
Now, I get it. They're 19 or what. They're a little older, but still, this is still what you would consider to be, young love.
Yeah.
And everything is magnified at that point in your life. You think this person's the one. You think you're going to buy a house and have the white picket fence and 2.5 cars and 2.5 babies and 2.5 men. I don't know. But you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. You believe wholeheartedly this is the one.
Yeah. You believe every relationship is the one. I think a lot of people do at that age. Now, is it out of the realm of possibility that Toni would have done anything from Kodi?
It's possible.
It is possible. Even the smallest step forward can make a big difference in your financial future. When you open a Chime checking account, you're one step closer to a better financial future with no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Making progress has never been easier. I think we've all been in that position where we've had an overdraft. Well, with Chime, you can overdraft up to $200 with no fees. That's amazing. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Crime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details.
Hey, listeners. It's Leon Nafok. I'm here to tell you about a brand new series from me and Prologue Projects, an Audible original series called Final Thoughts, Jerry Springer, the story of a television show that changed the world and the man who gave it his name. But did you know that before the Jerry Springer Show made him notorious all over the world, Springer was something else entirely? A respected Midwestern politician, the progressive mayor of a major Rust Belt city, a man many saw as a future leader in Democratic politics. How did this idealistic rising star, with his lofty political ambitions, take a turn in such a radically different direction? You can find the whole series available now on Audible. Just search for Final Thoughts, Jerry Springer on the Audible app, or go to audible.com/Springer.
In January 2012, Toni Fratto signed a plea deal agreeing to plead guilty to second-degree murder with a sentencing enhancement for using a deadly weapon, which would spare her from the death penalty or life without parole. She also agreed to testify against Kodi Patten. So obviously by this time, she's not thinking that she's going to end up with Kodi.
No.
For the rest of her life. She's about, how do I not get put to death and how do I not spend the rest of my life in prison? And it sounds to me like they probably didn't offer Kodi this deal, right? This deal is for Toni because they don't have as much against Toni as they do Kodi.
Yeah, and I'm thinking they feel like Kodi's the main culprit here.
Or at least they feel that's what they can prove. But at the same time, they don't want Toni to get away scot-free. So if they can strike a plea deal, maybe it's good for both sides. So she's going to testify against him, but this time the story had changed. Toni admitted to being present during the murder and admitted to hitting Micaela with the shovel, but she said she sat on Micaela's legs while Kodi Patten cut her throat. Because you remember before, it was Toni cut her throat.
Right.
And then it was they both cut her throat.
Now it says Kodi cut her throat.
Yeah. So now this is like the third version at least. On January 27th, Toni officially pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. And on April 16, 2012, Toni was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole and a 20-year enhancement for use of a deadly weapon. She was eligible for parole for the murder charge after 10 years. But even if granted parole, she would still have to serve 8 years of her enhancement penalty, meaning at the very least, she would have to serve a minimum of 18 years. And, 18 years is a far cry from the death penalty. It's a far cry from life with no parole.
Sure is.
But 18 years is still nothing to sneeze at.
Well, that's a good chunk of your adult life.
It really is. Now, the family may not believe that. They may not think that that's anywhere near good enough. According to the Salt Lake Tribune, Judge Daniel Papens described Micaela's wounds to the court and said she suffered during the attack. It took a long time for her to die. Horrible suffering. That's what he said. The judge added, while there are many facts explaining what happened, I don't have any information about why this happened. That's the big question that remains. And I'm, I was thinking about this plea deal for Toni. And I just wonder how much of it is the prosecution fearing that they're just not rock solid in their case. And there's a chance that she could get off completely. And that would be the worst thing of all.
Of course. Yeah, I think it's plausible.
The judge noted that Toni had no prior criminal record, was active in church, was well liked in school. the judge told her per Deseret News. That's what makes this even more puzzling, that a person like you could participate in such a terrible crime. I hope that someday, Miss Fratto, that you'll be able to get your life back in order. You have to live with this forever. And that is a very true statement. Again, I think for some people, it's not that hard to do. They don't sit around and think about what they've done. It doesn't nag at them. But this is not a hardened serial killer.
No.
And as the years go on, it probably is going to be something that, she thinks about every day. Hopefully she, deeply regrets her role. Defense attorney John Springate argued that Toni never would have been arrested if she didn't come forward because she felt guilty, since there was no forensic evidence linking her to the crime.
That's a good point.
And it's potentially very true. But why did she feel guilty? Was it because she really did, have a role in this? She hit Micaela. Maybe she cut her throat. Maybe she held her down. Either way, she participated. Or, at one point she said she only came forward because she didn't think Kodi should have to be in this thing alone. That didn't make any sense to me.
Maybe she also had some pressure by
Kodi's dad.
Kodi's dad.
Yeah, I had that thought as well. Toni's attorney noted that she scored below average on her psychological evaluation and was mentally and physically abused by Kodi Patten. In January 2011, Kodi was captured on camera at West Wendover High, pushing Toni against a wall and lifting her legs off the ground while he choked her. And apparently this wasn't the first time. He physically abused her. Springate explained that Toni was a sheep and not a black widow. He said she had the mental and emotional maturity of a 15-year-old and was controlled by a boyfriend who was jealous and possessive and isolating. And again, all of that could be true. If she had been controlled by Kodi to, this really terrible degree, is it out of the realm of possibility that, through some of these calls, these visits, he said, hey, I need you to do this for me.
Right.
I need you to come in and admit your part, take some heat off of me, that even though he was behind bars, she was still scared of it.
She easily could have been.
And thought, well, there's still a chance he gets out, and what's he going to do to me then? I don't think you can dismiss some of that. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened. I'm saying I think you have to at least entertain the option or the possibility.
Yeah, and at that point, maybe Kodi's dad had something to play in it as well.
Yeah, because it does sound like maybe he exerted a little bit of pressure.
Yeah.
How much, we don't know. He had a vested interest.
He did. And,
in doing so.
He knew that Toni's parents didn't want her talking to anybody, but yet he drove Toni up to the police station.
Toni spoke to the Costanzo family in court saying, I know what I did was wrong, and therefore I'm taking responsibility for my actions. I'm sorry for what I did, and I'm sorry for what I did not do. And that is protect Micaela. And again, that's kind of what you would like to hear, right, from people. Now, it may ring hollow to the family, and she may not mean a word of it, but you hope she's sincere, because what she's saying is what you would think most criminals would feel or should feel. But that's not always the case. Letters to the judge described Toni as a kind and gentle person and a good student. Her mother, Cassie, said she changed in the year before the murder. The family allowed Kodi to move into their home about 6 weeks before the murder because they feared Toni would leave if they didn't. And again, is that because she was so in love with Kodi, she would have done anything to be with him? Or was that because she was being controlled so much by Kodi?
I'm thinking it was probably more the controlling factor.
Yeah, I think it could have been either one or maybe a little bit of both. I don't know. Cassie noted that since being incarcerated and away from Kodi, Toni returned to the person she used to be. And there's no doubt that people can change once they enter a relationship with someone, depending on, what type of person it is that they're entering into a relationship with.
Yeah.
Her father, Claude, also wrote an email to the Salt Lake Tribune and said, "We thought Kodi was really trying to put his life in order. He's always had a lot of problems. The side of Kodi, which we knew, is completely different from the Kodi we know now." Well, I hope so, because I would hope you wouldn't let him be with your daughter
If you knew this.
if you knew the side that of him back then that you know now. Cassie told the media there were elements of the case that weren't public. As quoted by Deseret News, she said, "There's things that lead up to that night that no one is aware of yet." She said that when Kodi picked Toni up that night, he had already been driving around with Micaela in his truck for 90 minutes. Toni had no idea what was going to happen and believed her life was in danger. She didn't believe that she would ever see her family again. She knew her life was in danger. She knew Kodi very well. We all knew Kodi very well. She knew Kodi, and she knew the frame of mind he was in that night. And she knew as soon as she got in the car. She told me, "Mom, I knew I wasn't coming home." So there's one thing that jumps out at me there, and it's that her mom saying, "We all knew Kodi very well," pretty much insinuating that they knew that this was not a good guy, that he was doing things that weren't good, either with her daughter, to her daughter, but yet you allow him to live in your house. Why? She said it was because they feared Toni would run away.
Yeah.
And maybe that's true.
At least you can control the situation, or at least you think you can control the situation by having them there.
Yeah, obviously they couldn't, because look how it turned out.
Right.
But I get what you're saying. You think you can if they're living under your roof. When asked why Toni went along with the murder and didn't try to help, defense attorney John Springate said he didn't have an answer. He said, "We're pretty clear that adolescents do unbelievably stupid things. And her psychological profile shows that while she's 19 years old now, mentally and emotionally, she is much younger. And typically adolescents don't think things out. I'm not going to try Mr. Patten's case, but according to the statements and according to everything we know, it was Mr. Patten who was getting all the materials together. It was Mr. Patten who said she had to die. So you can draw your own conclusion. Who was the organizer? But the girl I was representing did not seem like an organizer to me." And again, each defense attorney is going to run down the other person.
Of course they will.
That's what they have to do. But, let's kind of think about it logically a little bit. Was it Toni who brought along the shovel and the zip ties? Or was it Kodi? I mean, I think the answer to that question tells you who the organizer was. And who had it in their mind that Micaela was going to be hurt, if not killed, that night. On May 9th, 2012, Kodi Patten agreed to a plea deal for first-degree murder with a deadly weapon enhancement in order to avoid the death penalty. So he must have felt pretty sure that if he went to trial, there was no way he was winning that thing. And he was taking his chances with getting the death penalty.
Sure was.
Kodi's attorney, John Olson, said he denied cutting Micaela's throat and had a different account of events. Shocking that two different people involved would have two different accounts of events. Olson also said that Toni's journals were full of venom towards Micaela. As reported by KSL, Kodi's involvement was initially bridging the girls together for a fight, but things went bad really fast and people panicked. There's plenty of blame to go around in this case between the two of them. And to be honest with you, Gibbs, I think I believe that part. I don't think Kodi is blameless at all.
No.
If anything, more likely than not, he's the mastermind.
Yeah, he led this.
But it also seems to me that Toni had a pretty strong level of involvement. Did she hit Micaela? Did she participate in cutting her throat? But even if she just held her down so that Kodi could cut her throat,
She's guilty.
that is a very high level of involvement. You still participated in the murder of a young girl. On August 24th, 2012, Kodi was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. In court, Micaela's father demanded to know why Kodi killed his daughter. When it was Kodi's turn to speak, he said he went over the events of that day in his mind, but he didn't have a reason. The Deseret News quoted him as saying, "I've sat and tried to go over it and over it. There's no reason. There's no why, no justification for it. Sorry's not enough. I apologize for everything. I'm sorry. I can't describe what happened. Can't even begin to describe it. Sorry isn't enough. I wish I could ask for forgiveness, but I don't feel I deserve it."
So do you believe somebody when they say things like that?
I do think there are some times when people do things and they're not quite sure why they did it. It's so impulsive, but I'm not getting the feeling of that here. And part of that for me is the shovel, the zip ties, what seems to be some level of premeditation.
Yeah.
Well, to have a level of premeditation, don't you kind of have to know not only what you're planning to do, but why you're doing it?
Yeah.
Why would you start down the path if you have no idea why you're doing it?
Oh, and according to Toni, at one point, he was digging a hole. Why Micaela was in the back seat with Toni.
Hence the shovel.
Yeah.
But I like the part where he says, "I wish I could ask for forgiveness, but I don't feel I deserve it." I don't think anyone feels you deserve it.
So don't ask.
But outside of your immediate family, and maybe they don't even at this point. Kodi said Micaela was good to him, and she didn't deserve what happened to her. He recited part of a poem Micaela wrote that discussed a glimmer of beauty beneath all the ugly in the world. Kodi wrote a letter to the judge before sentencing and said he did not intend for Toni to cut Micaela's throat. However, the judge said at sentencing, "The evidence doesn't support your statement. I don't believe you. You were the primary perpetrator of the murder."
Yeah, even at this point, it sounds like he's trying to still influence how things were done.
Yes, I didn't intend for Toni to cut Micaela's throat. I didn't intend to cut Micaela's throat.
Right.
He said, "I didn't intend for Toni to cut Micaela's throat."
It's his way of saying, yeah, I didn't cut her throat, Judge.
And I didn't mean for her to,
Yeah.
but she did it anyway. And the judge is saying, "You know what? You're full of it. I don't believe a word you're saying." Kodi's family also spoke in court. His mother, Donna, said the crime was unlike him, and Micaela was Kodi's best friend. She mentioned that Kodi had EMT training and was accepted into the Marines. He was even given a deployment date before the murder. So he did have plans, right? He had things that were coming up. What I didn't understand was his mom saying Micaela was Kodi's best friend. We just heard earlier they hadn't talked in over a year.
Yeah. What kind of best friend is that?
Toni's diaries were never presented in court. Kodi's attorney, John Olson, discussed these diaries with Dateline in 2013, saying it was pretty clear this was a young woman who did not like Micaela Costanzo. It was clear that she was jealous of Mickey and worried her boyfriend would find Mickey a better companion. She was a very insecure young woman. She was overflowing in self-doubt. Well, you know what? A lot of 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids are.
Sure they are.
They're insecure. They have a lot of self-doubt.
Doesn't always mean they're the ones that kill somebody or initiate.
Yeah, as we wrap this one up, though, isn't that kind of the main mystery here to this story? We know who lost their life, and that was Micaela. We know who was convicted. That was Kodi and Toni. What we don't know for sure, because they've told a bunch of different conflicting stories, is were they both involved equally? Was Toni not involved at all? Was Toni even there? I believe she was, but I also believe what the judge said, and that's that Kodi was kind of the main perpetrator. He was the driving force. If I had to put money on it, I would say, it was Kodi who had the shovel. It was Kodi who brought the zip ties. Now, did Toni go along with him because she loved him, or because she was afraid of him, or because she hated Micaela? I don't know.
Yeah, it could be a combination of those.
It could be, it could be a combination of all of it. But it is one of the strange things in this case is that, Kodi said a lot, but hasn't said why Micaela died. Nobody said that. What did he say? I don't know.
I don't know.
I think tough enough that you lost a loved one, but to hear the perpetrator said, I don't even know why I did it. I think that would be tough as well. Toni Fratto lost her first bid for parole in April 2021. According to an online document published by the Nevada Department of Corrections, Toni was denied parole in February 2024 and will be eligible for consideration in May 2028.
3 years plus away, right?
Yeah, it sounds like she comes up maybe every 3 or 4 years, something like that. But again, the motive behind the murder of Micaela Costanzo is still so unclear. Authorities seem to agree that Kodi Patten was the main perpetrator. I still think there are questions about whether Toni participated. Was it because she was controlled by Kodi, or was it because she wanted to? Her and Kodi were angry with Micaela because she allegedly wanted to get back together with Kodi. Kodi didn't want to, and Toni would have been upset because, hey, you're trying to, steal my boyfriend.
At the end of the day, you have these high school students making a really bad decision that they decided that either Kodi or Kodi and Toni decided that Micaela needed to die. And for what? Because they thought that they loved each other or they didn't like the other one. I mean, it's so pathetic.
Well, most of the murders that we talk about are senseless. I mean, essentially they're all senseless,
They really
right?
are.
But I think to some degree, some are even more so. And this is one of them. It wasn't like there was even robbery involved or, anything like that. And I don't even know that Micaela wanted anything to do with Kodi.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it just is strange all the way around. But again, if you're going to try to get into the mind of a high school student, you're going to struggle to try to figure that out.
Oh, for sure.
It's not an easy place to navigate. But that's it for our episode on Kodi Patten and Toni Fratto. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is California from Vegas. So I have officially just caught up with all of TCAT and Unsolved, and I just paid for the year of Patreon. So I am starting that because I have not been on any of it. So I was waiting until I got caught up on both of these to go and start at the beginning for Patreon. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything that you guys do and just keeping us, entertained and giving us all these facts and just all the details that we wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. You are literally the only podcast that I listen to, and I am just so grateful to have you guys to listen to literally all day long and at night when I'm playing my video games. So I hope you have a wonderful new year and can't wait to listen to you guys next year. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for the email. A lot of kind words. Appreciate all of those.
Appreciate the voicemail.
Yeah. What'd I say? Email? Oh, I'm glad you caught that.
Well, you know,
Thank
that's what I do.
She really piqued my interest, though, when she started talking about video games.
You're a gamer.
I know. I got to know what type of video game she's playing while she's listening to true crime all the time.
I just like she got the message of you cannot listen to anybody else but our podcast.
That is not true. You can listen to whatever you want, but
as
also
long as you listen to ours.
Also, please listen to ours.
Hello, my name is Hannah, and I'm from Michigan, so not too far away from you guys. But I just thought I would leave a message because I have been listening to you guys since I was a teenager, and now I'm an adult and I'm married, and I just think it's crazy that you guys have been part of my life since I was about 17, and I just turned 26. So it's crazy that I've been listening to you for all that time. I'm sure your guys' life has changed a lot, but I always listen to you while I'm at work, while I'm driving, and I've been keeping up with the podcast the whole time. I am pretty sure I've listened to every single episode, but just want to let you guys know that I think you're hilarious and entertaining, but also I love the dignity you give the victims of the crimes and the backstories that you give on the criminals. So I really enjoy the podcast and have been for a very long time. Keep your own time ticking.
Wow. I mean, I think that really puts it into perspective.
It really does. It was, wow.
I mean, if you think about it, my youngest was like 10 or 11. Yeah. And that is mind blowing because, you know, she's in a year or two going to finish up her bachelor's in nursing.
Yeah, that's true.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
How things have. Now, things for me, they haven't changed at all. Hardly.
No.
Now, except for the fact that I was working with you.
Right.
The first couple of years that we were doing the podcast, and then I got laid off. But ever since that time, there's not much that has changed.
Well,
same coffee maker, you know, same desk.
But the people around you in your life, there has been a lot of
change.
I mean, like me, I was about her age when we started the podcast, you know, and here we are.
You're 26.
Yeah, I'm 26-year-old.
And now you're...
I look older than I am.
You're 34 or 35. And have been for the last 20 years.
Sure. Some people might say, hey, you look more like you're 58. I'm like, no, I'm not 58.
But we appreciate the voicemails.
We do.
We had no mailbag. So that's it, buddy, for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Inspired by the hit Wondery podcast Against the Odds comes the gripping guidebook, How to Survive Against the Odds, Tales and Tips for Animal Attacks and Natural Disasters. This might just be the most important book you'll ever read. Go inside life or death situations where everyday people survived nature's most extreme scenarios, and learn how you can too. In these tales, you'll hear about the grit, willpower, and know-how needed to endure shipwrecks, alligator attacks, earthquakes, and more. You'll learn from experts, including top doctors, about what happens to your body and mind in life-threatening situations. Plus, important tips on what to do, and equally important, what not to do when faced with a situation that is truly against the odds. Go to survivalguidebook.com to pre-order How to Survive Against the Odds today and get the perfect gift in time for graduation and Father's Day.